I'm Amy Lowell. I'm the wastewater superintendent, and we're here tonight to talk about the Great Pond Phase 1 sewer project. Yay! We'll get started. So an overview of this meeting. Here I am welcoming folks, and I'm happy to say that there's at least one member of the select board here. Bob Mascali is here. Am I missing anybody else? Not that I'm looking, I just want to let people know if they're here. Peter McConerty is the Director of Public Works here in Falmouth. And I have also Hal Swanstrom, who he supports both water and wastewater as an engineering technician. Chris Syriac is the Assistant Wastewater Superintendent. And Nick Christopher is with GHD, the designer. And they'll be performing their roles at the after the presentation and the question and answer today. So I'm going to give a presentation, and then we'll have questions and answers. To ask a question, you'll come up to this microphone, and don't try to take it out. Just try to use it as is, because it'll be hard to get back in the stand. But it seems pretty quiet. I think people will be able to hear you. And those questions to start with should be of general interest, not about your individual property, because not everybody in the room wants to hear about everybody's individual property. But after that, after we've had questions and answers of general interest, then I'll stop talking here, and the gentleman that I just introduced will come up here with me, and we'll be at these 4 tables. And the idea is that you can come up if you'd like to, if you still have patience with this topic after all that, and ask individual questions about your property. So we're not going to have all the answers tonight. This project has been designed, but it has not been bid, and there are still, we're not going to have all the answers, but we want to tell you what we do know, and we also have a sheet here, a sheet where if you get tired of waiting or don't want to wait in line, you can write down your name and your contact information and what your question is, and we will get back to you. So that's how it's going to work. Will your presentation be online? Yes, absolutely. It's not right now, but it will be tomorrow. And also, FCTV is behind the magic curtain, and they are recording this. And actually, they told me yesterday that they're actually broadcasting it live, so that people can be watching it at home. I didn't know until yesterday that was going to be available, so that's why I originally had said it would not. So they're broadcasting it live on Channel 5. It will be available on the FCTV website afterwards, and they'll most likely play it, as they do other meetings on several times after this meeting. So let people know if your neighbors couldn't make it, let them know they can go to the FCTV website or look at the Channel 6 schedule and take a look at the presentation. So an overview of the project. The goal, obviously, of the project is to improve water quality in Great Pond. This is the first of at least 2 phases of sewering that will be done. This sewer area is the town's next highest priority. The sewer project involves a new collection system in this sewer service area, which we'll be looking at more closely, a lift station here at the north end of a town-owned parcel between Teaticket Highway and Brick Hill Road, and dual force mains, a pair of pipes to convey that wastewater from the Brick Hill Road lift station up to the town's existing wastewater treatment facility. The schedule for the project is we'll be submitting the loan application to the state. We are on the list for a 0% interest loan from the state for this project, but we have to submit our final application this month, August, and we're going to be bidding the construction contracts this fall. There will be 2 construction contracts. Construction will end at the end of, will start at near the end of this year, and is projected to take 2 years to complete. So it'll be completed by the end of 2027. So sewers will be available for connection at the end of 2027 or the start of 2028. Property owners will have 1 year after notification to connect to the sewer. So you'll get a notification when the project is complete, either end of 2027 or beginning of 2028, and it'll tell you that you have a year to connect to the sewer. The sewer service area is approximately 600 properties on the northeast end of Maravista and on the Teaticket Path Peninsula. It's mostly single-family homes or condos, condominiums. There are a few commercial and multi-family properties in this area. The sewer connection types. So there will be a pipe in the street in every one of these roads, and some of those pipes will be gravity pipes. And in this figure, which I hope you can see here, the green areas, which are only on Maravista in this project, the green areas are going to be served by gravity sewers. So those properties will connect to sewer by gravity. The properties that are shaded tan or brown, which is all of Teaticket Path Peninsula, as well as the lower portions at the end of the roads that go, that dip down a little lower, those also will be served by grinder pumps. There are a few properties that may have a gravity pipe in front of the home, but because the property drops off and the home is lower, they may need to pump into the gravity system. We'll figure that out as we get a little closer. But this is the preliminary. This is a pretty good idea of what the gravity and low pressure distribution will be in the sewer area. It's a 2-year construction time frame, as I said. The town's contractor will put sewer mains, which are the larger pipes, in the roads and the manholes, and then lateral pipes from that main in the road out to the property line for each property in the sewer area. So a lateral is just the pipe from the sewer main in the road to each property owner's property line. There will be several passes of construction on each road because the contractor will come in and they put in the sewer main, and then they come back with another crew who puts in the laterals from that main to the property line. Then they come back and do temporary paving, and then they come back and do the final paving on the project, the permanent road paving. So that is 4 times that the construction will go by each property, but it's a linear project, so they keep moving in each time they come by. We do plan, as part of this project, we have in the project bid documents, full width mill and overlay paving for all the roads that are currently paved in the sewer service area. Unpaved roads will be restored as they currently are surfaced. Most of the roads in this sewer service area are private roads. The town is not taking over ownership of roads as part of this project, and we're not taking over maintenance of the roads. We are paving them because we are disrupting them, but they're not becoming town roads through this process. There is also no stormwater improvement associated with this project. I'm sorry to say that, but stormwater improvement, again, on private roads it would increase the cost of the project dramatically, and it's not in the project. There will be multiple crews working simultaneously in the sewer area, and we won't know ahead of time exactly how the contractor chooses to move through the area. But as I'll be talking about later, we will provide information updates as on a very regular basis about where the contractor is expected to be in the coming weeks. There are preliminary traffic detours included in the contract, and the contractor will be allowed to work year-round. This is a summer community, and it's not ideal to have construction in the streets in the summer. However, it gets the project done a lot faster, and it saves money, and it moves through each area consistently. So there is no summer exclusion in the project except on Route 28. The Brick Hill Road lift station will be constructed, as I mentioned, at the north end of the 20-acre town-owned parcel between Teaticket Highway and Brick Hill Road. It's designed to accommodate wastewater flow from this sewer area, as well as from planned sewer areas further to the east and in Falmouth. it's laid out for to allow future expansion even beyond that, if is needed in the future. The brick construction of the lift station will also take about 2 years, and the Brick Hill Road site will likely be used as a staging area for the contractors. It was used as a staging area previously in a water project, and it will probably be used again. This is one of the architectural drawings for the project, showing the approximate look of the building. It'll have Cape Cod shingles on the outside. It'll have electrical conduit and facilities on the outside, but it is designed to, as best possible, match the architecture in the area. So I have a few pictures here just to give you an idea these are pictures from the Little Pond Sewer Area construction, which was the last project that the town did west of this area. This is installation of gravity sewers and a manhole in the Little Pond area. And this is installation of a low-pressure sewer lateral. So you can see in here that there's a pipe already in the street, and because this is low pressure, that is a relatively small trench, and this crew is installing a lateral to the property line. Full-width final paving. We did not do full-width final paving on the Little Pond project, and that was a very sore point. That's why it's in this project. So we did full width in some areas, but not in all of it. And on this project, it's included for the whole project. So whatever the existing width of the pavement is, we're repaving that. Yes. Not the what? No, I'm sorry. We're replacing the existing footprint of the paving. Again, there will be some detours and some traffic impacts. One of the early things that will happen in the project is that you'll have the opportunity to tell the contractor and the town where you would like the sewer lateral to be installed. The sewer lateral placement would depend on where the existing septic line leaves the house and some other factors that I don't need to get into right now. So you could consider discussing this if you have a plumber or an installer or an engineer that you work with. Or if this is something you already know, you can start looking into this. We do in the design have a lateral location planned for each property at this point, and it's based on the available information that we have. The engineer looked at the septic records, and where we have septic records, we are locating the laterals based on where the building is on the property and where this shows the septic system is. But what will happen at the beginning of the project is that the contractor will put out a stake, a green stake, and then when we'll provide you a sign. So you will be able to tell us, no, we don't want it there, we want it here. And we can change that before the lateral's installed, we can change where it will go. The sewer connection process. Sewer connections will not begin until the end of 2027 or the beginning of 2028. So it's more than 2 years from now. I don't want people to leave this meeting in a panic that they have to connect, that the project's beginning and you have to connect to the sewer. You can't connect to the sewer for more than 2 years. So there is time to figure things out and plan ahead for it. The first step will be to contact installers or plumbers or engineers and review sewer connection options and layout and obtain quotes for the work. Again, doesn't need to happen now, but that is when you're preparing, and we will be sending out mailings ahead of time telling you need to be preparing, then you would start this process. For the Little Pond project, we required that connections be overseen by a plumber licensed in Massachusetts. I am considering certifying drain laders instead. The town doesn't have that right now, but if we were to do that, that would require a town bylaw change. So to be honest, I'm not certain about that right now, whether a plumber will be required to be involved for all of the work. We are also planning to implement a new sewer connection process. For the Little Pond project, there was this whole separate sewer connection process that is obsolete. The town building department has a building permit system called Permitize, and we will be setting up a module in that for sewer connections, and the contractors will apply through basically the building department's permit system to connect to the sewer. So this is a schematic of a simple sewer connection via gravity. I hope you can read this. We do have some 8.5 by 11s up here that we could talk with you in person if you're not getting it, if it's too hard to see. But this is showing that the town's going to install a clean out, which is basically a connection into the sewer, access to the sewer at the property line for gravity connection. And the town will own and install the sewer pipe in the road, and then this lateral to the property line and a clean out there. The property owner will be responsible for installing everything from the building to the clean out at the property line. So this drawing is very simple. The connection can, of course, be much more complicated depending on a lot of factors. The property owner is also, and the property owner's contractor, will also be responsible for abandoning the septic system. Abandoning your septic system is the jurisdiction of the Board of Health, but what they have required in the past is that you pump the sludge out of your septic system, and then your contractor has to punch a hole in the bottom of it and then backfill it with sand. They can remove it if you want. That's likely more expensive. So what most people do is punch a hole in it and fill it with sand or clean fill. This is a schematic of a low pressure or grinder pump connection schematic. So again, the town will, the town will install the pipe in the road, which is a smaller diameter pipe for low pressure, and will install a lateral to the property line. And at the property line, it'll look a little different. It sort of looks like a water valve, which you all have on your property. So we'll install a valve at the property line. And then the property owner's contractor is going to be responsible for installing, again, the connection between the home or the business, in the case of a business, and that lateral at the property line. In the case of a grinder pump connection, there is a grinder pump involved, and I'll be talking more about that, and a control panel, electrical for that. This is a little bit sort of a cartoon of a grinder pump connection. Again, here's the pipe in the street, and here's the sewer lateral to the property line, and the valve at the property line. The property owner's contractor will, again, take gravity pipe take it from the house into the pump, and wire up the pump to a control panel, and then they'll install this pump, and the pump will have a smaller diameter pipe which will pump into the town's sewer system. Here's a picture of a Little Pond grinder pump installation going on. You can see they installed the grinder pump pretty close to their house, and this is the control panel on the side of the house. These are a couple of completed grinder pump installations. One thing I didn't mention is you can get an indoor pump. If you have a basement and an area that you want to consider putting one of those in, that is an option. We only had a couple of people do that on the last project, but it is an option, and I have not heard complaints about them. But you wouldn't want it in a living space. You'd want it in a sort of a utility space in your house. This is a more standard installation. Here's the top of the grinder pump. You can see like 5 inches maybe of it sticking out. It's a green plastic cover that's maybe 18 inches in diameter. And here's the control panel on the side of the house. Here's a gravity connection and septic abandonment going on. So here somebody's exposed the septic system, or the contractor's exposed the septic system, and they're gonna fill it. And then here's a gravity sewer being installed in 2 different locations. So I wanted to talk a bit about grinder pump policy. Grinder pump policy has not yet been set for this project. So I can't tell you for certain what the grinder pump policy will be. I can tell you what the grinder pump policy was first for the last project. The last project, the Little Pond project, we installed 681 grinder pumps. The town agreed, the select board voted, to provide those pumps for single-family residential properties, not for commercial and multifamily properties. The town also agreed to provide maintenance of those pumps, reserving the right to charge the property owner if the pump was misused, if people are throwing things down the drain that really don't belong there and it's causing a problem. We reserve the right to charge property owners, but overall, the town is performing maintenance on those pumps. The town also agreed to provide emergency pump out service as feasible during power outages greater than 24 hours. Many people choose to put in a generator for their property, but if they don't have that, this is something that the town did for the last project. Town also voted to provide pump replacement. The select board voted to provide pump replacement at the end of the pump's useful life. Finally, the town also provided a subsidy, which was a flat amount. It didn't reflect the actual cost on any one property. It was a flat subsidy to partially compensate property owners with grinder pumps for the additional cost of pump installation. The idea was you saw that it's more complicated and therefore more expensive to install a grinder pump, and in many cases, but not all, it is more expensive. And so the town did vote to provide a partial subsidy. The property owner for that project installed and owned the pump and must protect it from damage afterwards. This is something we've continued to notify people when they get, when you do a building project, or if somebody does a building project on that site in the future, they need to protect that pump, or even in the worst case, if they're gonna build right where they put it, they may have to relocate it. So the property owner is responsible for that. The town's not gonna go move people's pumps around. And the property owner pays for electricity. Electricity is not a big cost, it's about $50 a year. These pumps don't run all the time, they just run when the level gets higher in the pump chamber. However, all those things that I just said require spending town funds on private property. And spending town funds on private property requires special legislation. Special legislation was passed to allow this for the Little Pond project. There will be an article on this November's town meeting to petition the legislature to allow for Great Pond Phase 1 and potentially future projects for the town to do this kind of thing that they did for the Little Pond project. So a grinder pump policy for this project has not been voted and will be discussed and voted at a future select board meeting. This is another photo of a grinder pump installation. Here's the pump, here's the control panel. Grinder pump care, we're almost done on grinder pumps. Bear with me. So a grinder pump can handle all typical household wastewater. However, don't flush these things down the drain. Wipes, oil and grease, rags, diapers, tampons, plastic, dental floss, stones, shells, etc. Note, however, these things shouldn't go into the gravity system either. People do put these things in the system, and it can cause problems on their own property, or it can cause problems and does cause problems in our collection system, which then can back up into private property. So we strongly recommend that all that goes into the sewer is sanitary waste, kitchen waste. And again, you have to protect the pump from damage during activity on the property. During a power outage, unless you have a backup generator, you have to, if you're on a grinder pump sewer system, you do need to limit water use. Water use is limited just by the power outage itself. You know, the washers, a lot of appliances require water, but for your water uses that you can still do when the power is out, you will need to be aware of the limited capacity. The last thing I'll mention is that before you leave for an extended period, if you have a grinder pump, it's a good idea to run about a half bathtub of water down the drain. A lot of people are seasonal, so if you're not going to be using the house for quite a while, I'd recommend putting some water, clean water down the drain so that when you come back, your pump has clean water in it. I'm going to talk next about cost. There are three costs associated with the sewer project for property owners. Number one is the cost of the betterment, and I'll be talking a bunch about that. The next is the cost of sewer connection and septic abandonment. And last is, once you're connected to sewer, you will be charged for sewer on your water and sewer bill. On the betterment, the select board voted a sewer betterment policy earlier this week on Monday. And I'll talk more about that next. The next two steps in the betterment policy are after bids are open, so late fall of this year, the select board will vote an order of betterment assessment. And that'll include a list of all the properties in town and how many sewer equivalent units they'll be assessed, which we will talk more about later, and then the betterment assessment per property. After the project is complete, so in the fall of 2027, the select board will vote to certify the total project cost and certify the betterment amount. So that amount that they certify at the end of the project can be lower than the amount that's voted in the order, but it cannot be higher. So you'll know what the maximum betterment cost will be at the time that they vote it in late this year. I misspoke. I said in the that the betterment plan and list would have the number of SEUs. It won't. It will have the property list and the betterment assessment, the amount for each property. So here, this is a summary of the select board's policy that they adopted this week, or at the beginning of the week. So here are the costs that are applicable to the sewer service area. The collection system, which means the sewer mains in the street, the laterals to the property line, and the grinder pumps, if they are purchased by the town, and 60% of the construction engineering cost, because some of the construction engineering is associated with other parts of the project that are not being covered under the betterment, like the design or the construction engineering for the lift station and those force mains that go up to the plant. 70% of that project cost that's applicable to the service area, so 70% of the cost of the items I just listed, will be paid by service area property owners, that's you, via betterments. And we'll talk more about that. All remaining costs, so the cost of the brick kiln lift station, the cost of the force mains up to the plant, the cost of the police details, fiscal and legal costs, those will all be borne entirely by the town. Betterments will be assessed based on sewer equivalent units, or SEUs, and the sewer equivalent units will be assigned to parcels in accordance with the table. Again, what I'm doing is summarizing the policy that the select board voted. So the select board didn't vote a betterment amount yet, they just voted a policy that would allow us to determine the betterment amount. So this is the sewer equivalent unit assignment. I won't go into a lot of detail on this. Single-family residential units or single residential condominium units will all be assessed one sewer equivalent unit, as will multifamily. Multifamily up to 4 bedrooms. Multifamily including 5 bedrooms or more and apartment buildings, as well as motels, will be charged a quarter of a sewer equivalent unit per bedroom, based on the assessor's records. All other commercial, and there are a few commercial enterprises in this area, will be charged 1 SEU per 135 gallons per day of water use based on their metered water use over the last 3 years. Vacant lots, they will be assessed based on the zoning and the acreage, and multi-use would obviously be the sum of the sewer equivalent units from the other uses. So I said the select board didn't vote a betterment amount, but we can, based on the policy and our current estimates, estimate what that betterment would be. So based on all of those, based on the policy, the total cost that will be paid via the betterment is approximately $20 million, a little more than $20 million. The estimated number of sewer equivalent units in this sewer area is currently 830. So if you divide the 20 million by 830, you get a little more than, or $24,576 is exactly what you get per sewer equivalent unit. You can pay the betterment up front, if that's what you want to do, but you can also pay it off over 30 years. The town petitioned the state legislature for the last project, and then it was adopted into law that the town can charge this betterment over 30 years. So the dollar per SEU per year over 30 years is $819 a year. So if you're a single family property or a condo, the maximum estimated betterment cost per year is $819 a year. I call it an estimated maximum because there is project cost contingency in the numbers that allowed us to derive the 20 million. And because we expect the final number of sewer equivalent units to be higher than 830, the assessor's office is still working with us to finalize the number of sewer equivalent units. So I expect that to go up, so then the final number would go down. I don't know how much down yet. I'm just saying this is a high, I expect it to go down. And did I say 0% interest? That's a big deal to be able to pay this off with 0 interest over 30 years. Obviously, it's a lot of money. The betterment is a lot of money, but dividing it out over 30 years at no interest is a very large benefit to the town and to the property owner. The betterment process. So the initial betterment is expected to be due after the construction, expected betterment payment is expected to will be due after the project construction is completed. So they'll have the hearing initially and set that betterment amount, but you won't start getting charged for the betterment until we know the total final project cost and the project is completed. Betterments are added to your real estate property tax bill, and they can, as I mentioned, be paid in full or a portion in installments over 30 years. They're billed on the 3rd and 4th quarter bills. That's just the way the assessor or the collector's office does it. Betterments are assumable at sale if the lender approves. So that's sort of a fancy way of talking about this, but basically, how a betterment works at the time of sale depends on the lenders, on the banks, in part on the banks involved. Different banks have different rules about whether a betterment has to be paid off at the time of sale or not. So I can't say for certain what the status of that would be for your particular property at your particular sale. There are 2 things, an exemption and a deferral, that are applicable to people who meet very specific criteria. Under Massachusetts law, people over 65 whose principal residence is in Falmouth may qualify for an annual real estate tax exemption. There are income and asset criteria, so I don't want to mislead people that these are going to be available to everybody, but there are people who will meet these criteria and this may be available to them. It's also possible to defer betterment payments. Again, under Massachusetts law, homeowners 65 or older whose principal residence is in Falmouth and with less than $40,000 in annual income may be able to defer the betterment until house sale or estate settlement. There is an interest applied for this, and I don't have the number right now. This is an assessor question. It also requires an annual application to have that deferred. And the assessor points out it would need to be approved by town meeting. So we would need a town meeting article to allow that. So I'm done on betterments. Now I'm moving on to the next cost. So we talked about betterment cost. Now I'm talking about sewer connection cost and the cost of abandoning the septic system. So the cost of the connection varies enormously, property by property. It varies based on the size and the layout of the property elevation, and the depth to groundwater. If your property has very shallow depth to groundwater, your contractor may have to dig and in the groundwater and do some dewatering, which can make it more difficult. Your proximity to wetlands and resource area buffers may increase the wetland permitting cost or the wetland associated cost. The location of the existing septic system relative to the house and to the lateral stub is relevant. Obviously, whether it's a gravity connection or a low pressure connection. For some properties, so a grinder pump, I should have mentioned this earlier, grinder pumps require a 30 amp electrical service, If there, on our last project, we found that there were a few properties that did not have that. So a few properties required an electric service upgrade in order to accommodate the grinder pump. That obviously is not for everybody, but it's something that can vary the cost. Also, property restoration affects the cost quite a bit. Depending on the existing landscaping at the property, paving, if your connection happens to affect paving or patio or deck or something, the restoration can affect the cost. Interior plumbing modifications, not everybody has to make those, but if you are changing where the sewer comes out of your house, that can affect your interior plumbing and come with a cost. It's recommended that when it comes to it, further down the road, you'd get 3 contractor quotes to do this work. So people want to know, what is it actually going to cost, right? So let's talk about averages then. People's cost, some people in the Little Pond sewer service area, honest to goodness, paid like $1,600 if they had a very short connection. The house is right on the street and there's no restoration. The lowest number I saw was like $1,600 for a connection, and the highest number was more than $20,000. But on average, they were not on either side of that. On average, so we got, at the end of that project, we ended up with cost numbers, actual installation cost numbers from hundreds of properties. And so we had that data so we could look at the average cost for a gravity connection at that time and the average cost for a grinder pump connection at that time. So the average for a gravity was about $5,300 and the average for a grinder pump was about $7,100. There were some gravity connections that were more expensive than some grinder pump connections, but in general, this was how it broke down. So if I were going to estimate today what it would cost, what I do is I take those averages and I escalate them 4% a year to today, or to 2027, and I get $7,800 approximately for gravity and $10,500 approximate for low pressure. This does not include the cost of the pump itself, which the select board will still need to be voting and discussing, and it does not include an electrical upgrade or any extreme, scenarios like we just discussed. The third cost that I mentioned is the sewer use cost. So customers, once you connect to the sewer system, you will be billed for sewer on your water and sewer bill. The bill you get right now is a water bill. Then it'll be a water and sewer bill. And just like with water, the sewer billing, there's an annual fee, and then there's a tiered rate structure depending on how much water is used in the period. The annual cost for an average single-family residential property, which is one that uses about 100 cubic feet of water in a year, is approximately $500 per year, or $42 a month right now. That's if you're using an average amount of water. The sewer rate, I will tell you up front that the sewer rate will likely go up in the next year, and it may be that the select board votes to have it go up for the next few years. It hasn't been raised in a number of years, so it is due for an increase. But this is what an average bill would be under the current billing. If you use a lot more water, the bill is a lot higher. So there is some assistance for properties with the sewer connection cost. Again, these have criteria. There's the Cape Cod Aqua Fund, which has interest rate loans that vary from 0% to 4%. For the low interest loans, 0 and 2%, applicants must meet a whole bunch of criteria, including it must be a single family residence, owner occupied, year-round primary residence. So I don't take my word for the details. You can talk to the Aqua Fund when things get closer. We will also have information on the website with links to these things. So what I'm talking about today is the bird's eye view summary of each of these. There will be more information later and links to who you can contact directly about it. There are also Massachusetts residential income tax credits. So the credit is 60% of the connection cost, not to exceed $30,000, up to a total of $18,000 over 5 years. So this also is a big deal. This has been raised significantly since the last project, And it will apply to a lot of property owners. Not all of them. The qualifying criteria include it must be owner-occupied principal residence. But there are fewer criteria for this than for others, and so this can really help a number of people out on reducing their taxes. Future communication. So I've said an enormous amount tonight. I'm sorry. Thank you for sticking with me. For updates via email or text, as I'd said in a previous mailing that you hopefully all got, you can sign up on the town's website for the Notify Me app. If you can't figure out how to do that and you want to just give us your contact information, we can do that. Again, that same form that I showed you at the beginning would be a good way to do that. Write down your name and your contact information and just say at the bottom, please add me to Notify, or I want to get notifications. So we'll add you to the list, and then during construction, we'll provide weekly updates, brief updates, just a bulleted list of where the contractor we expect to be working and what we expect to be the detours, and those same updates will also be on the website. And you can get this information via either email or text, or both if you want. There will be future meetings. This is not the last meeting on this project. So there will be additional meetings, for example, about the sewer connection process and the permitting process. As you could hear earlier, it's not all worked out yet. So I can't answer all questions about how the sewer connection process, for example, permitting how that will work at the time. But we will, as we develop that, we will have future meetings about it, and as the time gets closer. We will also talk more about cost. There's the betterment hearing and future discussion about cost, and also future meetings about grinder pumps specifically. On the last project, we provided training with the manufacturer's representative on the grinder pump installation, and so we expect to be doing something like that in the future. For more information, I've referenced the website pretty heavily here, and I've listed contact information. Again, this presentation will be on the town's website, on the wastewater division's website tomorrow. So I see people taking pictures, and you're welcome to take pictures of screens, but you can also log on and get the whole presentation later if you want. So this is the contact information for Chris Syriac and Kyle Swanstrom and myself. I'd request that you try them first, and they will come to me if there are questions that they can't answer, but I can't answer everybody's questions. So I really appreciate people using my resources, my excellent resources here when you can. And that's it. So as I said before, I wanted to start with questions that are relevant potentially for not everybody necessarily, but a larger portion of the group. And unfortunately, because this is being recorded, I would like to ask people to come to the microphone to ask their questions. I know that's a bit of a hike for some of you, and you don't need to form a line, you know, but people who want to ask questions that would be relevant to other people, please come to the microphone. And if you can, say your name and ask your question. Thank you.
My name is Heath Coker, and I'm a realtor, and I have 5 brief questions.
Okay.
One is, why the drain layer option for the installation?
So I'm not certain that we're going to do that. This is one of the things that has to be decided. On the last project, there were a limited number of plumbers that wanted the responsibility, and it made some challenges. It may be the way we do it again, but that's what's made me think that we need to look at that.
Is it less expensive?
Potentially, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not doing it because I'm not claiming that it would make it less expensive. It's mainly the logistics.
Okay. The indoor grinder pumps, why would you choose that, and does the town buy those as well?
Yeah, well, so again, I don't know what the town will be doing. That's up to the select board. But if the town buys outdoor ones, they would buy the indoor ones. So on the last project, we ordered a bunch of each kind and and contractors would come and
What's the
pick up what they
advantage of
needed.
having it indoors?
So there's less excavation. What you don't have to put in a gravity sewer. The gravity work is all in the house. So then all you're putting outside the house is a smaller diameter pipe from where that pipe exits the building out to the lateral. Like I said, we didn't have a lot of them. We just had, I believe, 2 installed on the last project. So I don't have a lot of data on that, but that's how it worked.
There's no advantage to future projects that are going to have like they're testing.
So that is another, that's a good
thing.
point. That's another factor, is you don't have a pump outside that you might have to protect or relocate.
Right, but for people doing the urine conversion thing, that doesn't help any of that kind of installation or anything?
Urine diversion. So I'm not sure the urine diversion question. What's the urine diversion
actually,
question?
that goes into septics, so it's a different thing. Never
Yeah.
mind. Okay, how often has a pump out been needed, like the 24-hour thing, if we have a power outage? For Little Pond was my point.
So I believe there have been 3 events, 2 or 3 events, in which we've been called to do the pump downs. And the most calls we got yet on the Little Pond sewer area that has 681 connections, or grinder pump connections, was 18 calls in an event that was several days long.
Okay.
So
having
so
a
that is-
generator may not be as important.
So that's the part of the policy, the previous policy, that I'm most concerned about as the wastewater superintendent. I want to be very cautious to people that we cannot, in all conditions, get out to all properties and be pumping them out every day. It's just, so that's something I really want to revisit in the next policy. And at least we will have to, if that commitment continues, it's just qualified that if there are trees down across roads, we may not be able to get there. If the area is flooded, we might not be able to get, if the power's out to everybody, we may not be able to get to everybody very quickly. So I'm just cautioning that.
No, that's all good stuff. So the last one is, there's an estimate as to the cost, and you said at some point that's going to get locked in. But if the cost comes in higher than that estimate,
The town has to eat that cost.
What's that?
The town has to pay for it.
So everybody would pay for that.
So after the order of betterment assessment is voted in near the end of this year, I'm expecting it near the end of this year, that establishes the maximum cost per sewer equivalent unit. If, I really would not want this to happen, but if the project came in higher than that number, then the way it has to work is the town pays that additional cost.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
George Chapoulis, a very easy first question. Are the pumps 220 or 110?
They're 220, right? Do you remember? I believe they are.
Good. And typically, how big is the tank that they're in?
So the tank has, it's 70-gallon capacity, but that's not its available capacity. It's pumping between, like 16 gallons and 46 or something. It's
so small.
It's small.
Very small. And last, does for the connection between the house and the lateral line,
Yep.
does that have to go to Conservation Commission for every single property that's Conservation Commission gets involved with?
The Conservation Commission for the last project approved a sort of a standard set. There were like people who fit into 3 different categories, and some people are entirely out of jurisdiction. Yay, no conservation review. But they had people fitting into several different categories, and they stated what level of review was required for each. So yes, if you're in conservation jurisdiction, there is some kind of conservation review, but it would not be this. It's unless, in many circumstances, it is a condensed review for these installations.
And they can't say no, correct? Because we have to connect.
Right. It has to, yep, they have to let you figure out a way to do it.
And it would be great if there's no increase in impermeable surface involved, that it was a simple administrative approval. But
You
that's
can
just
take
a
that up with the
suggestion.
conservation.
I
They
wouldn't-
did a lot of work to make it more streamlined last time, but there was still permitting for properties in jurisdiction. Hi.
Brian McDonald, 39 East Harbor Drive. So I have a couple questions. One was you put up on the slide about stormwater. Okay, we're a private road.
Yep.
We have like 6 catch basins, and I did get a letter because we also have a right-of-way. So if the process is trying to stop water from running off into Great Pond or Coonamessett River where we are, is there any consideration on that? Like, for instance, for the right-of-way, will a berm be put there to try to keep the runoff from going in there? And then the catch basins. I did talk to Kyle, wherever you are, and I'm waiting for the town engineer to call me up back on those questions.
Okay.
But that's the first set.
We did take a couple of questions about this already, I mean, in previous meetings and on the phone. And unfortunately, there are many, many private roads in this area, and that's one of them. And the town is not responsible for stormwater management on private roads. So unfortunately, this project does not involve any stormwater management improvements. I agree that, or we all know that stormwater can also affect water quality, and ideally we would be able to do some of that as part of this project. But those are 2 significant barriers. The fact that it is a private road, and also that I mentioned earlier the cost of the project. There's already significant, it's an expensive project, so that is not included.
And again, that's why I want to talk to the town engineer, because one thing would be, if we're being forced to fill in our septic systems, then why wouldn't they just fill in the catch basins at the same time? Fill them in with sand, cover the road, we no longer need them, okay?
So so the stormwater system in Falmouth is entirely separate from the sewer system. And so the stormwater system is intended to capture rainwater and runoff. And that will not change with this sewer project. And the water has to go somewhere.
Right.
So the catch basins are not probably
But there's
ideal.
not going to be any drains in the road, is that what I'm to understand? Where the
town will be
water for
putting-
rainwater would just drain into?
So whatever is there will be maintained. The
Okay.
town will stay. The town will pave around existing catch basins.
No, I understand that. I guess my question is, if we're trying to improve the waterways, why would we want this water to continue to leach into the ground and go there? I'm just presenting it there. I want to talk to the engineer about it, because to me, it's as simple as what we just heard the health department say, you got to fill in your septic system. So if you fill in these yes, you're still going to get runoff and everything like that. But we have a responsibility now, right? Where we could just let them fill up and not clean them out.
Right.
But we got hit with a bill personally. We did it ourselves through our association. It cost us like $6,000 to have these catch basins cleaned out. Okay? And I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. So that would be the first thing. Kyle, if you can get somebody to call me back, the town engineer or somebody, I really would like to talk to them on that.
Okay.
So now I'll move on to the second question.
Okay.
A lot of people, like myself, we have outdoor showers and we have hose bibs. Is there any kind of metering that can be done so that you can monitor or meter what water is being just put out to the ground and not through the sewer system, so that you don't have to pay the sewering cost of that gray water or whatever you want to call it that's just being done outside?
So that is not an option in Falmouth.
Okay.
With we have one water meter at each property, and all the water use that goes, all the water that goes through that is billed for on the water and the sewer bill. So the town does not allow a separate sort of irrigation meter
Right.
or other meter.
Right.
There are a lot of water conservation measures in place on a regular basis in Falmouth, and it's my understanding that the water department that would be contrary to conservation to allow separate billing at a lower cost.
I'm not looking for separate billing, I'm saying like an abatement program. So for instance, in town of Braintree, when I was there, I had to fill up my pool.
Yep.
I could come back and say I put 18,000 gallons of water in my pool.
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay that through my sewer bill.
So I don't believe that's an option in
Okay.
Falmouth. We've never done that.
So it's something to talk about. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Anybody else want to come up to the mic? Are you coming up, sir? Okay, excellent. Absolutely, on the wastewater division. So if you go to the town website and look at departments and then wastewater division, it'll be there. We could actually send it out on the notify me if we wanted. If we make a PDF of it, we could send the presentation out on that notify me app as well. Hi.
Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Cap, Precinct 3, town meeting member. A couple of questions. Going back to the beginning of this project 4 or 5 years ago, you had 2 properties off of Seabrook Drive and Estella that were slated for being taken over by eminent domain for lift stations, and those have gone by the wayside. And I was under the impression that had those lift stations been installed, most of us would not have to put in grinder pumps. Is that correct?
So it's partially correct. I did work for a long time to try to site lift stations on the Teaticket Path Peninsula. The main locations that I was targeting were on Village Common Drive, which is much lower, and the property that I was looking at on Estrella and the other was to provide an pipe access to that lift station. I was not able to, the town was not able to get lift station easements, or excuse me, lift station sites, and even the easements were exceedingly difficult. So no, we do not have a lift station, and yes, if we did, some additional properties would have been served by gravity.
All right, and I have another question, overall question, and this goes to your venue. If we do get the outfall off of Kite Park, is that going to eliminate the outfall in West Falmouth Harbor, or are they both going to be?
So the town is pursuing an outfall. We are planning to permit and design and construct an outfall for discharge of all treated wastewater from our main treatment facility. So if and when the town permits this outfall, permits and constructs it, the plan is to stop discharging to our existing open sand beds that are in the watershed to West Falmouth Harbor and north of that, and discharge all treated wastewater from that facility to the outfall.
All right, thank you.
Separate project, and a big important one.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
John Flynn, Teaticket Path. You say the grinder only has a 70-gallon tank, right?
Yep.
We have a fairly new 2,000-gallon septic tank. Can you, instead of going all the way connected directly to the house, can you leave the tank there and have the pipe coming out of going to the leaching field go to the grinder pump instead of?
So it's a very good question, and unfortunately the answer is no.
So it doesn't make any sense.
Well, so
You're going to have a 2,000-gallon tank instead of a 70-gallon tank.
right.
And you're not going to be able to get, if you have a big power outage, you're not going to get to everybody's house. They're going to go without you having sewer.
So this is an important question, but the issue, there are a few issues with it. One is that we need the same type of grinder pump at all these properties because it's a networked system. So we need the same kind of pumps with the same pump curve pumping into this system. We can't have different properties with different types of pumps. The other is that the goal of the system is to move along the wastewater. And if you let it sit there in a bigger tank, the wastewater gets old, it gets septic, and you end up with even more potential for odor and solids issues, or odor issues within the sewer system. So I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but that is the answer.
But it flows out to the leaching field with no problem. Now, it could flow into the grinder pump the same. It wouldn't have to be a special pump. It's just gravity feeding into, like it's feeding from the house.
Right, that's your existing system, but with the new system, your grinder pump will have to pump into a network of a low-pressure network that all the other pumps are pumping into. So you'd need the same kind of pump that all the others have.
Well, it would be the same. Why would you need a special pump for what I'm talking about?
So it's manufactured together. So we can talk more about it offline or separately, but it's a manufactured unit with a level control and a control panel, and it's a custom. It works together as a unit, and it wouldn't work in that application.
Well, what I'm getting at, in a prolonged power outage, you're not going to be able to get to every house.
That's true.
Between the Maravista project that was already done and this new project.
Right.
You're never going to get to them all.
So I will say that so there are a fair number of properties that have generators, which means we don't need to get to everybody's property. There also is a very large seasonal population. So a lot of time when there have been storms, the 3 storms we have dealt with were all in low occupation times. So we didn't have 600 properties to get to. In a very significant storm, most things are not, there are many services that are not available. So I understand what you're saying. It's an important point. It is a factor, but we do not allow the larger tanks to stay in the ground. So I don't want to take up everybody else's time discussing that further. I'd be glad to talk with you more about it. I understand it's an important point.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Brett Peroni, English Street. When you put in the lateral pipes off the main,
Yep.
are those going to go right into the property?
They go to the property line. So I will say, most people are not aware exactly of where the property line is. The town, if there's a road and then there's a right-of-way on either side of the road, or sometimes the right-of-way is shifted over. So sometimes the town ends up going what appears to be 8 feet into your property when it's actually just to the edge of the right-of-way to the property line. So the town takes that lateral to the property line.
The reason for my question is that I'm assuming that the finished road surface would be complete and then those lateral tie-ins would not disturb all the work that was just done on the road.
Right. Some people end up electing, for whatever reason, to have the lateral in their driveway or in and so there is additional disturbance when they have to connect to that. But in general, if the laterals are, well, all the laterals are out of the paved right-of-way. So when you connect to it, you're not disturbing the road.
Okay. And then in terms of the cost, whether you're a full-time resident or a seasonal resident, the costs seem to be the same unless you qualified for one of those age-specific or income-specific categories.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, John Cushane. Just a quick question. Grinder pumps outside versus inside,
Yep.
noise level and frequency of them being activated?
So they're very quiet. The grinder pumps, so as I said, we have 681 of them, or probably more than that now, in the ground. and I've never had a noise complaint about any of them.
Okay.
The control panel, when there's a problem, there is an alarm an audible alarm that goes off, but the operation of the pump is when it's in the ground, it makes no noise. I believe that the ones indoors, you can hear something. It's not totally silent.
Maybe the
but
equivalent of your furnace kicking on, or even less than
something
that.
like that,
Maybe even
yes.
less.
So I wouldn't, you wouldn't want it next to your bedroom. You
Right.
wouldn't want it in a finished part of your basement. But if you have a utility area in your basement, it's a perfectly reasonable way to connect to the sewer, is
And-
to have the grinder pump in the basement.
And the frequency, roughly, how often do these kick on, roughly?
So it depends on the water use. If
Right.
you're not using any water, it won't kick on.
Okay.
But based on that storage, if you use even 40 or 50 gallons, it'll come on for a minute and then go off again.
All right,
Or
thank you.
not a minute, it'll come on for a little bit and then go off. Other questions of general interest before we break down to our tables here? Okay, thank you. Those were excellent questions, and we have a record of them from the recording of this meeting. So thank you for those, and if you're interested in staying, the four of us will be down here, and again, we can't necessarily answer all your questions, but we're going to give you the information we have now, and if you want to write down your contact information and your question, we will get back to you later. Thank you.